If there is anything to be said at all about Star Wars, it's that you should take nothing at face value whatsoever. There are hidden meanings, messages, and underlying themes throughout each scene and moment in the entire story. When characters speak, they often speak with double meaning. When the Jedi and Sith battle, there is often far more going on in the realm of the unseen than the swinging of lightsabers put before us. In the background of this galaxy far, far away lurks the most mysterious things that we here at the channel do our best to uncover and bring into the light for all of us to see. The great mysteries of the Star Wars universe. Well, today, we will be talking about the ultimate power in the Star Wars galaxy. Yes, acolytes of a galaxy far, far away, I'm speaking about that of the Wills. Everything, and I mean everything in Star Wars, begins and ends with that of the Wills. These mysterious beings have been subject to many debates and much speculation. With little information there is available to us about them, it could be safe to say that not even Lucasfilm themselves know everything about the Wills. These beings are the purest incarnation of George Lucas's personal touch on Star Wars, more so than anything else. In this video, we will be covering the appearances and mentions of the Wills and figuring out exactly what they are, who they are, while also offering our own speculation throughout. So my friends, leave your weapons behind. For today, into the cave we go. In the original rendition of Star Wars, before it was even put on screen, George Lucas had it in his mind that the Wills were an ethereal energy that flowed throughout the galaxy. They were essentially equivalent to the power of the Force. However, Lucas later dropped this idea and just made the Force its own separate thing. However, the connection between the Wills and the Force does not end here, as Lucas once claimed that the Wills themselves are the Force, and the midichlorians found in every living thing can connect to and inform the Wills. At this point in time, the definition of the Wills is considered legends. The canon version of the Wills is that they are an older, nigh omnipotent beings that record the events of the galaxy. They are known as the Ancient Order of the Wills. In the first rendition of Revenge of the Sith and the Revenge of the Sith novelization, Qui-Gon had learned the ways of transcending physical death by a shaman of the Wills. Important to note though, not a will itself. Qui-Gon claimed that the shaman was the only person he knew who could supersede death itself. This, as we know, was later retconned by the Clone Wars, which replaced the Wills with the beings known as the Force Priestesses as Qui-Gon's teachers on this account. One common misconception within the lore is that the Wills are in fact these Force Priestesses. However, they in fact are not. Other people have speculated that the Wills are the name of Yoda's species. As interesting as a theory as this has also been shot down by George Lucas himself, as he vehemently denied it. So who or what exactly are the Wills? What do we know about them is that the entire story of Star Wars is told from their perspective, out of a book known as the Journal of the Wills. In an interview, Mark Hamill let it slip that the original title for Star Wars, at least on the script, was called The Adventures of Luke Skywalker as taken from the Journal of the Wills. The Journal of the Wills is an item that has passed down between few hands in the galaxy. In the canon novel Star Wars Aftermath: Empire's End, a man named Adar, who is part of the organization known as the Church of the Force, watched a holovid of another man who was reading directly out of the Journal of the Wills, therefore confirming to us that one does indeed exist in Star Wars canon. In this, we have two verses from the journal. The first one goes as follows: "First comes the day, then the night. After the darkness shines through the light. The difference, they say, is only made right by the resolving of gray through refined Jedi sight." That passage there is recorded as the Journal of the Wills 7477. The other excerpt goes as follows: "The truth is in our soul, is nothing that is true. The question of life is what then do we do? The burden is ours, to penance we hew. The force binds us all from a certain point of view." Unlike the first verse, this one doesn't have a reference, as it was an excerpt quoted by the man in the holovid. But from these passages, we can get an idea of exactly what the Wills are like and what else is within them. The Wills are a peculiar creature who speaks in rhyming riddles. Much like the Force itself, it is mysterious and often baffling. The Journal of the Wills has been mentioned only a handful of times in the mythos, but we do know that nearly 100 years after the Battle of Endor, R2-D2 dictated the entire story of the Skywalker saga to a will, who then recorded it within the journal, therefore giving to us all the story of Star Wars, a story that happened a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. The issue we face within the wills is the fact that there are many contradictory facets of information about what exactly the wills are, by the fact that they have recorded a physical journal and have been in contact with a droid, which would lead one to believe that they were humanoid, or perhaps at least human size. George Lucas, however, states it differently, going back to what he said about the wills quite literally being the Force itself, adding on to this saying that they were a part of the Force and that a part of the Force resides within every living being, not unlike midichlorians. George Lucas stated that it was like this: the wills were microscopic beings that lived within every living thing alongside the midichlorians, but were separate from the midichlorians. The midichlorians themselves were a conduit of the living force, which the wills ultimately fed off of. Unlike the midichlorians, however, the wills are sentient beings, able to communicate with their host. It's even a popular fan theory, and even George Lucas himself has spoken about this, but the relationship between the wills and the midichlorians was going to be a major driving force for his own sequel trilogy, before of course Disney ultimately purchased Star Wars. Understandably, this is a bit of a wild concept at first, so let's start from the beginning and attempt to break it all down and make it a little more simple. There are two facets of the Force, two sides of the same coin: the living force and the cosmic force. The cosmic force is what binds and holds together the greater galaxy and all of the wider existence. This is the force that Yoda spoke of to Luke on Dagobah when he said, "The force is all around us, in the swamp, the tree, the rock. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter." Yoda in this instance was referring to the cosmic force. The living force, on the other hand, is within every living creature. This is the force generated and is what actually flows via the midichlorians. Beings who are force sensitive are they who have an abundance of midichlorians, so many that they can actually tap into and have a certain amount of control through the living force. This is why all things contain the force, but not all things can use the force. Soon we have plans of releasing a video about the midichlorians and a more in-depth look on how they work. For now though, let's focus on the wills. The wills are what guide the individual into assessing the cosmic force through the living force. Hence how the Jedi and other force sensitives are able to use abilities. The wills are a neutral system of beings that all share one mind and keep the balance of the force by speaking to their host. When a Jedi master sits down to meditate and they claim the force speaks to them and guides them, this is actually the wills being a pathfinder for the Jedi. Their primary objective is to keep the balance of the force no matter what, as this maintains the very structure of the universe. Some Sith, on the other hand, have directly come against the wills and the force. Whenever Plagueis and Palpatine attempted the ritual that would create the perfect being by manipulating the midichlorians to create life, the force rejected them and maintained balance by creating the Chosen One. Of course, with the information we have now, it is obvious that it was indeed the wills themselves that coalesced to create Anakin Skywalker. This is a fact confirmed by George Lucas, as essentially the wills are Anakin's father, the Force itself. Again, this is not speculation, this is confirmed by George Lucas. George has also stated that Luke Skywalker inherited all the potential of the Chosen One. This is due to the fact that when Anakin became Vader, the Force was once again thrown out of balance, so the wills responded in kind by enriching the young Skywalker and in turn Leia with their father's potential. Speaking of Luke, it was George's original idea that the pre-Disney sequel trilogy would have explored the wills far more, as well as telling the story of Leia becoming the new Chosen One, as well as Chancellor of the Republic, and Luke undertaking the task of searching for a new Jedi Order. Understandably, this is a far cry from what many have envisioned the wills being. Certainly, many thought they were angelic beings akin to Force priestesses. However, it does begin to piece together a lot of questions regarding the Force itself when you think about it, and whether or not the wills are simply an aspect of the Force or actual physical beings. One question remains though: how were these microscopic amoeba-like creatures able to write the journal of the wills? The beings are said to be able to move between hosts and inhabit them for a while, almost to the point of possession for a brief period of time. Not to mention they were able to communicate with those they inhabited. They were a few organizations who actually knew and worshipped the Wills, the Guardians of the Wills and the Disciples of the Wills. On the planet of Jedha, which we saw in Rogue One, the Disciples of the Wills preferred to listen to and try to understand the will of the Force, while the Guardians of the Wills preferred to sense the Force in its presence. They believed that both the light and the dark side of the Force were valuable, believing that for the light to exist, there must be a dark, and the Force remain in ultimate balance. Recovered from the ruins of Jedha, the lyrics to a prayer song from the Guardians of the Wills was found. It went as follows: "In darkness cold, in light cold, the old sun brings no heat, but there is heat in the breath of life. In life there is the Force, in the Force there is life, and the Force is eternal." It is probable to believe that the Wills may have spoken to one of these red-robed disciples and had them write the journals of the Wills for them. The Will that R2-D2 spoke to again could have been simply someone who had been temporarily possessed by the Wills. As we stated before, everything begins and ends with the Wills. I believe that the Tho-Yor, which were the 8 mysterious pyramid-shaped starships that called out to all Force sensitives who would eventually become the Jedi, were somehow forged by the Wills. These ships that called to all of the Force sensitives to congregate and become one unified order. The ships took them to Tython, a place rich with the Force itself, but prone to violent Force storms. Here, the Jedi learned about the peace of Ashla, or the light side, and the chaos of Bogan, or the dark. They had perfect balance and harmony, so from this, we can gather that there is possibly nothing wrong with the dark side, at least in its purest form, as the Wills maintain balance between the two, no light without dark. It is when there is an over-reliance on one or the other that the scales are tipped and corruption begins to spread. So, curious acolytes of the Force, what did you think of today's deep dive? Do you know much about the Wills of the Force and their story, or their overarching story in Star Wars lore? Are you satisfied with this final answer? As little as we truthfully know. Let us know your comments and speculations below, and as always, may the Force be with you, and I hope you have a wonderful day.